I think now is an exciting moment where we're laying down the foundation of the future of how organizations work, how talent gets developed. And now's a moment for us to really make a difference with our ambition around diversity, equity, and inclusion, and to make new jobs more accessible for fantastic women. So what shaped my career? Find these pictures a little bit funny. So you bottom left, I'm Canadian, and my mom was a teacher, and my mom taught me about curiosity and a passion for learning. She has gone to have 2 different careers and has 81 right now. And I just moved home to be close to her. She's just qualified as a marriage commissioner after 2 different components in her teaching career. And I said, why, Mom? You're 81. Like, why aren't you just hanging out? She's like, I love learning. I don't like funerals. I like weddings. I'm going to go to weddings, right? And so that's my mom. She just gave me this huge passion for being curious and learning, lifelong learning, and also making a difference. So it wasn't like go do something, like have a career that has a title. It was about go be something, use your gifts in the world. And that sort of stuck with me. And when I was mid-career, now I realize I'm not mid-career, so that makes me feel super old.
I'm calling myself mid.
But when I was mid-career, I actually had a lot of like reflection on what are my gifts and what am I going to do with all of this. So I started my early career in healthcare with a bit of a passion for how technology changes healthcare. It was the early days of the World Wide Web, and everyone was debating, well, I will date myself, debating whether people would put credit cards, the internet, into e-commerce, right? And I actually worked at I worked at a hospital first, and my undergrad in computer science didn't train me super well for people side of technology. So we were implementing new systems. I thought that was wonderful. Look, nurses use this system to like organize yourselves. And they looked at me like, no way, I don't need you. You know, you little kid, just, you know, get out of my way. I'm like, walked into the operating room and I said to the surgeons, you could organize all the instruments for, you know, in surgery much better. We could save money. Don't care. So therein lies a little bit of I'm gonna have to work differently with technology if we're gonna have technology change things. And I joined a Boston Consulting Group at about, I was like 5-6 years into my career, because someone gave me some advice, which was basically go learn from the consulting guys, because they actually know, you know, quite a bit about different industries and the like. And I thought I would just like explore more industries, more problems and that. So I was living this curiosity, living this like, what is it that we can do with technology and how do we change organizations? I had the courage, I think, on reflection, to you know, take on different challenges at work. I lived in Paris and in New York and in London for 20 years. I led our technology practice. I led our digital practice. And I found every time I was in the deep end, I was actually really excited about the work that I was doing and the impact that I was having. So one of the lessons for me was, you know, use that curiosity to keep yourself in the deep end, keep in learning, and have courage to, even if you don't know the answer, and goodness, I never know the answer, really. Most consultants don't, right? You know, grow in your confidence and your ability to solve hard problems, because that's what's going to make the difference in your career. And then on the right-hand side, that's my daughter. Sorry, I'm going to have an emotional moment. She just left yesterday for a gap year. She's 18. And through my career, I was always trying to juggle, what messages am I sending her? Am I sending the kind of messages that my mom sent? Or am I sending like this sort of workaholic, like crazy lady kind of messages? And there was quite a few times where I had a trade-off of be with her or do something at work. And I quite often chose her, and I don't regret that at all. So for those of you in the big bits of the juggle, you know, it is a balance. It's not about having it all. It's about making the trade-offs that actually work for your career and for your kids. And the bottom on the right-hand side is the picture I usually use when I'm asked to speak to women in consulting. I use the analogy of great shoes intentionally. That's my daughter playing with my work shoes. But I spent the early part of my career in the hospital trying to look like the administration or the management. And I tried to look like people who were 30 years older than me, right? Or 20 years older than me. And I didn't really feel comfortable to like wear the good shoes that I wanted to be wearing. or the good dress, which is apparently on brand. What I say is, have the courage and have the, the ability to just be yourself at work. Be yourself at work, be yourself at home. And I think that's been a journey for me in learning what is myself, what am I passionate about, and the like. So I'm not going to talk about myself the whole time, but I am going to come back to those principles of leadership, curiosity, courage, and connection. Just one thing on the TED stage, that was 10 years ago. And it was a development opportunity for me from BCG, which is hilarious, right? Didn't like speaking in front of large groups. And someone in the organization said, you should go do that because one day you're going to need to do that. And I went, on TED, that's how I'm supposed to learn, right? So I was a bit of courage to get up there, but it was a connection that someone made for me. And so I would leave you with, who are you making connections with? Who are you investing in? Who are you developing in the future? So on to GenAI and technology. I think we live at a moment in time where it's massively exciting. I think technology is often overhyped by people in the technology industry. And I want to talk to you a little bit about why I see this is a moment for really reinventing industries and really reinventing work. And it's a moment where diversity matters because the way we solve problems and the way we define the future will define how next generations of our women will lead. I believe that technology and organization is going to be the important unlock for how we use technology in the future. A lot of people talk about artificial intelligence. I'd like to call it amplified intelligence. I'd like to say this is a moment where we have a new technology and humankind can be better as a result. The challenge is there's a lot more disruption. I'm going to talk about technology, but I just want to acknowledge there's geopolitical disruption. There's economic disruption. There's other sorts of disruption in the environment. I'm going to stay on technology, but the CEOs that are like thinking about, well, what is this era of GenAI? They're grappling with, how do I actually shape my organization? How do I shape my talent to take advantage of this? And am I going to have a real big issue with my workforce? And the answer is you are. You're not going to do anything. So GenAI and talent are the top 1 and 2 factors driving change. This is some research that we can get to you after. 100%, all the C-suite leaders that we've surveyed in a recent study expect changes, significant changes to their workforce. The numbers, there's like a million publications of staring at the problem saying this is going to be big, right? But 95% of organizations have 1 or 2 or 3 or 5 transformations going on in their companies. So companies are really struggling to adapt to all the things that are, we've had AI since the 50s. I've been working with AI for 10 years, right? But organizations and the way we structure organizations have not kept up with the promise of technology. Only 30% of leaders feel confident in their change capabilities. And many organizations have employee bases that just don't feel engaged broadly. Forget about the technology. Most employees, when you survey them, they're excited or interested about GenAI, but they really fear job loss. And that's a real fear. So when we talk about the future and we talk about what's here, there's this force of disruption, there's force of opportunity, and there's a force of bit of like, how do we engage people in creating a future that's more inclusive or diverse, and frankly, organizations that are healthier and more fun to work in. So I'm going to ask a couple people in the room, just reflect on what are you excited about? I posed a little bit of a challenge. I'd like to say there's opportunity in all of this technology. So let's keep it a little bit positive for a second. But where are you excited? What do you think there's opportunity in the future? What do you think that's going to be? Yeah.
So I'll reflect on something that Michael and I were actually talking about just this morning. And I read something yesterday which talked about that for corporations, it's not enough anymore just to achieve financial performance, good financial performance. That, the demand from investors and other stakeholders is for corporations to do something good for the world. And with the power that corporations have, the money, the resources, the talent pools, if we turned our attention to making that, the second pillar, financial performance, and do something good for the world, turn the energy of the corporation to that second piece, I think it can really uplift our society.
Yeah.
So that excites me because I think that, the pressures are there for corps to do that. But the opportunities for what that can mean in terms of climate, talent, right, educating, re-educating workforces and so on are great.
That's really well said. Stacy?
Hi. So I see so much gold in the fact that AI is saving the workforce time when it's used right.
Yeah.
And therefore it's freeing them up time to be able to serve the customer experience better.
Yeah, and there's a lot of things that technology can do. I want to talk a little bit about how it's going to change jobs, right? And how actually companies, I just published a paper, there's a QR code at the end of this, I'll get it to you, but companies that are actually better at change are better at making a difference in the world, leaving their employees net better off and using technology. And it's an interesting one to say, if you set the ambition and purpose more clearly about the impact that you're going to have in the world, and you work back, the financials do come, right? And there's a good link between that. So there's no question that this new technology is changing things. I was like having a discussion with a finance leader recently, and I was like, when the spreadsheets came out, you teach finance, right? Spreadsheets came out, everyone was like, whoa, there goes finance function. Right? No. So the finance function has evolved, right? And finance people aren't sitting there with their little calculators and, well, frankly, other ways of doing math. We're doing like more sophisticated things with financial engineering. I'm excited about what we're seeing in healthcare. We're going to use the NHS, where I spent quite a few years helping. We're actually doing a really exciting set of stuff around using data to understand the flow of care delivery and getting services to most vulnerable populations. Stuff that people and services couldn't do because it required a connection. I call it connectional intelligence across different parts of the healthcare delivery service. We are finding ways to identify and target drugs that save people's lives, right? And if we say back to the purpose, right? It's not about, oh, I have this new widget or this other thing. And it's not about just doing a couple of tasks differently. It's about reimagining the way that we solve today's problems and tomorrow's problems and finding new ways to create value with the technology. Retail is another great example. It's one of the areas where we're seeing a lot more GenAI activity scaling. The opportunity to service customers better, to get products and moving through the supply chain better. It's wonderful. But I'm going to talk to you a little bit about what's going to happen to jobs, right? Because those jobs of people in call centers, think about a call center. What's the point of a call center? It's solving problems that didn't get solved somewhere, right? If we can solve them earlier, those jobs won't exist. Guess what proportion of women are in call centers? A lot. And so a lot of the tasks I think we need to look at, what is going to happen to our diversity objectives when work is reshaped. So our research would indicate 44% of working hours will change. Doesn't mean they all go away, where people will work, right? But we need to be more creative with how we work and what activities we actually work on. The workforce, so many roles will be at risk, right? And what I worry about, and I don't think there's enough dialogue on, is what happens when certain populations where we have made progress on diversity and getting people into the workforce, and those roles actually shift. What are we doing to make the new roles that we will be creating attractive to women? Like a tech ninja does not always attract women. The way that we do computer science competitions and stuff doesn't always attract women. So I think we need to find ways to define jobs and attract women and develop women in the new jobs in order to make a difference. So I'm hoping that you hear this message and in your lives you find a way to ask deeper questions, not about who gets a job and who doesn't, but how do we make the new jobs more attractive to women? And then on the worker side, that is individual people and their own skill development. There will be a massive shift in the way people develop. So corporate learning and academic learning will really change in the future. And by the way, we were experimenting with how long would it take to do a course design using GenAI, one of my heads of talent, and she showed me live She did a course design for something I was trying to do in like about 3 seconds. And it pulled in all of the educational discipline and all of our content, and it made some suggestions. It wasn't all perfect, but it was amazing. Anyway, the experimentation of that, men are 1.6 more times likely to be experimenting with GenAI. So you should be experimenting. You should be learning. You should be demonstrating that, modeling that to people around you, to your children. You should be asking questions around who has access to early adoption, who's using Copilot, who's getting training, right? So I think the impact, I'm going to talk a little bit about, but keep those questions in mind about the impact for women in business and women in mid-career, right? So roles will change. Accenture's doing some of the biggest scaled GenAI implementations in the world. And actually, I think quite publicly, I think we're doing more GenAI work than most organizations. The interesting thing, it's why I'm at Accenture actually, is to understand the patterns across industries and functions and to like look at how we actually adapt the workforce. It's really quite interesting. This is an example in consumer. What's going to happen to roles? It's a real one where you're actually using GenAI in the field force. So on the left-hand side is today's roles, and the right-hand side is tomorrow's roles. And a lot of the press talks about jobs going away. I think jobs will change. Some jobs will go away. So where you see additional capacity, that's a nice way for saying those roles will go away. Some jobs will change where it goes from one place to another. And actually, we've just done a big implementation of GenAI within our marketing function. And I'll talk a little bit about the change there in a second. 40% of our marketing activity can actually not happen. It can happen with technology. But what's left is people who are really doing phenomenal marketing stuff. So people that can work with the technology are really excited. I'll show you a picture of that, but they're really excited about the ability to amplify the intelligence of marketing, right? And so I want you to think about roles will be decomposed into tasks. Some tasks will be automated, some will be augmented, and what will be left is a more expert workforce. So where does that leave you? Learn about the technology, about the new, keep adapting and growing. And I'm encouraging our CEO conversations to be much more around how are you helping your populations adjust? You're not going to have a whole pile of people leaving and hire a whole bunch of new people. That doesn't exist. And some of the new roles, we aren't pumping out of universities, right? So there's an incredible, it's just a shift, but it's important to understand it's not just about job loss, it's about job change. And it's about reinventing how we work with technology. So what I like to talk about is on the left-hand side, it's like, okay, where's the value and how do you deal with the tech? And not all of my colleagues at Accenture like me to say, but like the tech is the easy stuff, right? The harder stuff and where we're actually behind is reinventing work, how we lead. Can you actually lead in uncertainty? Do you create a context where actually the technology is continuously evolving? People's heads blow off, right? Like, are you learning with the technology? Is the technology a coworker? How do you create context for, yeah, your job's going to change, but we'll give you this learning. It's very hard for leaders to like find a way to like create clarity in uncertainty. And I think I'll leave you with some principles after this that I think are important. The organization structures will adapt. Some functions won't exist. Other functions will be fundamentally different. We'll be able to do new things. So we'll be able to understand, like if you think about competitive intelligence in marketing, we'll be able to understand what P&G and Nike and all that, what they're doing in real time. We'll be able to reverse engineer their strategy. What does that mean for a strategy function? Those are the bigger questions to ask. The talent thing I'm hitting, right? So that's how do we access and create talent? And then how do we deliver continuous change? And not layered on change that people are tired of. Here's another transformation program. Here's another initiative. But actually change as a source of advantage, change of a source of innovation and really resilience and growth. And if you think it's one industry and it's just the tech stuff, have a look at how workforces change. This is research we're doing with the World Economic Forum. Across industries, there's going to be higher or lower, but quite a significant potential for automation, augmentation. And so I think that the message here is not, well, is it going to change? It's going to change. It's like, how do we adapt? How do we develop? How do we create this as a moment for our women to succeed? And I believe people are the heroes in this story. Come back to, It's not artificial intelligence, it's amplifying intelligence. Yes, there's technology, but how we use it matters. Think about it. We had a wheel, fire. We had a spreadsheet, a database, internet sites. We just do new things. It's how you lead, how you evolve in the organization, how you grow and develop. You know, people are going to be the ones, the people that will have jobs are the ones that are actually creative and thinking about how we use technology. They're curious and they're able to explore. So the questions to be asking, I hope I covered them, but are we developing women and all people, frankly, to succeed in future roles? And so the corporate learning environment actually, I think, needs to radically change. Decomposing sort of like, does somebody go to training and does that make a difference? How do you get just-in-time learning? How are you, actually as a person, a learning engine that you can take those skills from one place to another. One of the CEOs I'm working at, he's talking about careers, not jobs. Why is that? Because he's going to move those jobs all around. But careers, sticking with the purpose, back to are we making a difference in work? Are you linked to the purpose of the organization? The other bigger question is, are we perpetuating today's bias? So people will talk about the data sets that are being used to train algorithms. Absolutely need more work there. So many instances where, facial recognition software doesn't recognize faces that are different. Like it is a real thing. But are we also—
Can I get the chicken chai with oat milk hot?
And that's my real-time language translation, which is also possible with GenAI, right? But are we perpetuating the bias around who has access to jobs, who has access to the technology? Are we perpetuating the biases that we have around, well, technology is kind of a STEM thing and those people that are attracted to STEM. So therefore we're already in a pool that's really different. And then are we laying the foundation for ethical and responsible use of AI? And only 2% of organizations actually have operationalized responsible and ethical practices. And so every leader needs to understand what that is. And that's not, okay, the robots are taking over the universe. It's to ask deeper questions. How is this model trained? Where's this thing coming from? So I encourage you to just think a little bit more deeply than it's GenAI, it's going to change and then move on with your day-to-day life. It's like, how are you internalizing this in what you do? And so I think leadership matters, right? And I'm going to switch here to how do you lead for a minute and come back to the themes that I talked about at the beginning. But leaders are going to need to lead in new ways. There's going to have to be more curiosity, courage, and connection. And incidentally, this is how we talk about diversity, equity, and inclusion principles of leadership within Accenture, right? But to be curious, to ask the right questions, to have the courage to experiment and try something new, to create connections across industries and functions, to create connections for people to learn and grow. That's going to be what leadership is. I would add there clarity as well. Clarity of what it is that you're going after, the purpose, the value that you can create. There's a lot of stuff you can do, but really, is this going to achieve the goals and the mission that you set out for whatever it is that you're leading? That might be a department, that might be a team, but are you actually setting that context for your team to work that way? And then are you building a muscle around sort of change and accountability and judgment around this stuff? So I believe leaders, all of you, will need a fluency in change and technology. And I'd encourage you to think about your muscles there, so everybody can learn and grow. So inclusive leadership, what is it? Curiosity, courage, and connection. Just give you a couple of examples, maybe to bring that to life a little bit. Curiosity, sort of receptiveness to change, open to learning, inviting different perspectives. With your team, and with the technology, frankly, are you asking questions? Are you curious? Are you learning? How many of you are using GenAI in your personal lives? Great. Professional lives? Great. Are you sharing the learning with your team? And when it fails, are you letting people fail? Yeah, great, wonderful. This is a group that's way ahead of a lot of audiences that I end up talking to. There's a mindset around GenAI. Maybe it's changing, but I find there's a mindset when you start to deal with change in an organization, there's a mindset of everybody approaches the space differently. Some are curious, excited to learn, whatever else. Others are pretty like, whoa, that's for someone else, right? And as you get to mid layers in the organization, there's a lot of sticky skepticism. you know what it does is it like all the stuff that actually made a middle manager have power. I got control over this stuff and I got my spreadsheets and my Gantt charts and stuff. Some of that goes away. So people feel like, oh, that's what I do. So like, what am I going to do next? And they hang to today. So, I just encourage you to think about like, where are you today on your mindset? Really, really. I'm probably like, I try it, I use it, but I still don't, it's not absolutely in the flow of my work unless I can actually use it with the stuff that's on my hard drive, right? Where I use it for like, okay, I've written one speech. I should be able to write another speech, have a look at what's been latest done, blah, blah, blah. And we're using it at Accenture within our marketing function, within HR, within finance, as a drive to be our own reference. I can't tell people in the world to use technology if we're not using it. But I think when I look at our leadership teams, in different clients, there's a spectrum. So just recognize people start at a different place and what the narrative that appeals to you might be different from the narrative that appeals to others. So courage, like who are you going to take risk on? What doors are you opening for others? It comes back to the jobs thing and the tasks things. Who are you giving access to being the pilot teams that are working with this technology? Who are you giving access to the training? How are you making space for people on your team to actually demonstrate results and things that they want? I had one client who had a really interesting like future leaders group that they disproportionately had women in, and they had them doing the early pilots of new technology introduction. But are you creating the context for other people to have courage, and are you having courage yourself to demonstrate your learning and your successes and your failures? And then connections. I mentioned the change paper that we just published. I think the connection is creating opportunities for others, creating connections across different industries and functions, creating two-way communication. So are you listening as much as talking? Certainly I'm talking more than listening, so I need to think about that. And then are you using networks of influencers? And the team started with the various different personas that I had just mentioned. The team started with, gosh, this is going to change jobs. The CEO came out, our CEO said, there's going to be savings of X million dollars as a result of using GenAI. And everyone went, job loss. Okay? So I was sitting on a call. I created the picture on the left-hand side using ChatGPT. I said, create an image where people are working with this technology. And it all was science fiction. It was all like really weird and horrible. And I was like, no, make the robots cute. So then I got this like sort of cute thing, whatever. And I was like, okay, no, that wasn't quite right. So I just got a bunch of cute robots. And I was like, put it in an org chart because we want to do the co-worker thing. And I was like, no, it's not quite right. And then I said, okay, the people have superpowers, right? And it changed the dialogue a little bit. It's a bit of a silly example. And then I said, put it on Accenture purple. So the cape is the CMO and it's Accenture purple. Okay, great. But it created a dialogue that was different. Like, how do we amplify intelligence? How do we create this as a moment we're amazing at marketing? And that ambition to be the amazing marketeers, the ambition to use technology to do great, to create a better experience was, I think, an unlock. On the right-hand side is the humans. They're the humans that were involved in our early adopter pilot. They had the courage to like try something new, try something different. I said, bring the influencers in, bring the hard ones in, the ones that are going to stick to the change, like stick against the change, classic change management move, right? The lady that's sitting with glasses in the middle, she said on this call, you know me as a skeptic. 3 weeks ago, I would have told you this was all, and then she swore, right? All total crap, right? And I have to tell you, and then there was this silence. I'm like, oh no, here it goes, right? I have to tell you, this is the best thing I've ever seen, right? And it wasn't that the technology was perfect. It was we created an opportunity for them to talk about it. Our chief marketing officer demonstrated her use of the technology. She made 5 mistakes on the call, couldn't get the prompting work, whatever. That was courage. She stood up and she tried it and she took people's feedback and she embraced the successes and the failures. This team also was working with NVIDIA and coding the agents. They created a feedback mechanism. So they gave feedback to the agents. And I think the personification of agents and the ability to provide feedback and control, not stop, but control and influence the agents is going to be important. So I think this curiosity to learn, courage to try, and connection that brings in the influencers and listens, engages with people is going to be an unlock. So on that note, I hope I've given you a little bit of like personal story, a little bit about what tech's going to do, and a lot to think about around how we use this moment in time to create more diverse and more inclusive organizations as we adapt to this technology and find great ways to solve important world problems that exist.